It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm CJ.
And our guest is Ed Collins. Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, I'm really excited about having Ed. I mean, number one, he's been a good friend of mine and an encourager to me in my musical journey. But I like the fact that he brings a different dimension. You know, we've had DJs and we've had reps from record companies, and we've had frontmen artists, and we've had sidemen musicians. Mm-hmm. And here's someone who's been involved in the photographing and reproduction of music. And some
good-looking photography.
Oh, well, thank you kindly.
Oh, yeah.
Just real quick, and I know I'm stepping on your toes a little bit, but just name some of the guys and girls that you've photographed. I know we were looking at a bunch of them there. I'm going to put you on the spot on this deal.
Okay,
here.
well, you know, quite frankly, you know, every artist I've ever photographed is very, very, very kind to me. And I mean, and for some odd reason, we just kind of stood out. But I would have to say Alan Jackson and Mark Chestnut, Tracy Bird and Tracy Lawrence and Lori Morgan or some of my people that I'm very close to and Willie Nelson, you know, can't leave out Willie the legend because Willie, I mean, that guy opened a tremendous amount of doors for me in my life. And, you know, so when, you know, one hand washes the other, and sometimes, you know, you get paid, sometimes you don't, but it all washes out in the end, you know. So I'm just very pleased that all the artists that I have worked with, you know, I've worked from R&B artists to blues, country, gospel, jazz, even Tejano music too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What got you into the photography?
Well, I always had a fascination with the camera. My great uncle was a photographer, and he was up in New York, and he worked on a boat. He was like he was an engineer on a boat, a mechanical engineer on a boat. He kept the thing running. But he traveled all over the world. He took photographs and stuff, and he would show me slides. And he would let me play with his Crown Graphic and his Speed Graphic camera. And when I was about 8 years old, and then when I got 11, I got my first SLR, a 35 millimeter. Mm-hmm. And then when I got about 15, I really got enthusiastic about it. Then I was 16, I got very serious about it. And then when I turned 18, started working, then I was really dedicated. I said, this is what I decided I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's really got me into it.
So where'd you get the money to buy it? Tell about buying that really nice camera and how you... Then you work at a grocery store.
Well, I worked at a grocery store. I made a lot of money in tips, you know, and then I met a lot of really neat folks that come there. You never know who you were going to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so that was my experience, because I've always been a very, you know, introvert and shy person. But working in the grocery store, you'd always get to meet all kinds of people. And I met this guy who was an A&R guy, and I don't remember for whom he was with, but he had this Lincoln that was as long as a city block, and he always, every Christmas holiday, and every say he'd hand me a $50 bill. And I saved up that money, and then he helped me get a job as an iron worker. Because, I mean, I was making like $13 an hour being 18 years old. And I couldn't do both jobs. So I went on and did that. And then, of course, you know, that was my avenue to get my funding to get my cameras that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So in 1980, right after that Christmas of 79 of 80, I took all the money I had, $3,300, and bought all this Nikon equipment and didn't even know how to use it, you know. And then I read the books and talked to a couple of folks, and they kind of got me on the way. Some people that were kind of like mentors to me that really helped me. And then along the way, I met this guy named Ron Garcia.
Let me jump in here. Let me try to patch this up a little bit. This was in Houston, right? You were born in Houston?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Fourth generation Texan. And Ron he says, come to my house. And it was a Monday night, it was raining. And he showed me these slides, and I saw these images that he had. And I'm just like, wow. You know, because I knew the concert images is what I really wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And this guy had photographed all these bands, from Pink Floyd to whomever. He mostly did rock shows. And he showed me Stevie Ray Vaughan, these pictures. And I said, who is this guy? And he had some little EP that he did. And we went and saw him at Zelda's in Houston. And there was only 3 people in the crowd. And that's when the bug hit me that I really wanted. So Stevie Ray Vaughan was the first guy who was an influence that I really wanted to be a concert photographer in 1980.
Wow.
And so that was just really, really. I mean, it turned me on, and you couldn't turn the switch off. So,
so when you're a concert photographer like that, who pays you? How do you get paid? That's the question I have.
That's a good question there. So what happens is once once you get into knowing the people, their publicist needs photos, the band needs photos,
Gotcha.
Mom needs photos, the record label needs photos, and newspapers needs photographs. So,
Okay.
You might sell the same picture to 6 different entities.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
and then, so you're kind of pitching. You're having the pitch,
right.
the pictures,
yes,
the
you're
photos.
being independent.
I got you.
And then,
okay,
I met a lady who was Ann Meyer, and she was the bureau chief for People magazine when I was very young, 21 years old. I met her, and I was just being a stringer for them, and she gave me some assignments. And Willie Nelson just happened to be one of those around Houston. And then one of my assignments was to cover, Willie Nelson did a charity golf tournament. I think it was for Johnny Mitchell, if I remember correctly. It's 40-something years ago, but at the Woodlands Inn. And when I went there, I'm standing there, and I wasn't really starstruck by anybody, but when Larry Gatlin comes in, and he was smiling, with his glow, and he just says, "How you doing?" And there's this other little guy sitting over there, and he comes up and says, "Hey, can I have one of your cigarettes?" And he goes, "I'm Mickey Newberry." Ah. I had heard, from Newberry's train songs, "Blue House Gonna Rain."
Oh, yeah.
And I really didn't know, I wasn't educated enough on who Mickey Newberry was. And then when I would talk to this guy who was so articulate in speaking, and he just drew me to his voice. And his wisdoms reminded me, I felt at home like he was an uncle or something. He was his wisdoms just drew me into his knowledge and his expertise. And that guy had a lot of life experiences. And when he said, "Well, you ever heard that song that he did for Elvis, American Trilogy?" And I go, "Well, I don't know what American Trilogy is." He goes, "Well, let me show you." And he pulls out a classical guitar, sits right there. Of course, he had already had a few alcoholic beverages to make his evening. But
adult beverages will always get the evening rolling. Let me tell you.
And that man started singing that song, and then I knew exactly who Mickey Newberry was.
Oh, he's good, yeah.
And so people like that, they resonate with me. I said, I want to know what makes that guy tick.
Kenny Rogers did a Mickey Newberry song.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, see what kind of condition my condition is in. That song.
That's a good one.
And Mickey Newberry, would have these songs. And
did I say Mickey Gilly?
No,
you said Newberry.
Mickey
Wow,
Newberry.
I'm doing better than I thought I was.
You're doing okay.
But gentlemen like that, and then he gave me his phone number because he was living up in Oregon at the time, and I believe Susan is his wife, and just a wonderful person. But Mickey now, and I only saw him maybe 6 or 7 times in my life. The last time I saw him, he was in frail health, but he was doing a lot of Christian music and gospel music, and he was at a church in I think it's in Southeast Houston, and I went down there and saw him, and he played for about an hour, and it was just so amazing hearing that guy sing. And everybody has a Mickey Newberry story, It's kind of like I was riding the rodeo bus coming from there one time, and it's kind of like ZZ Top. Everybody's got a ZZ Top story. This little drunk guy goes, "Oh, I know Dusty Gibbons and Billy Hill real well." He couldn't even get their names right. So everybody has a Mickey Newberry story because he always lived on a houseboat and wrote amazing songs up in Nashville, up on the lake.
That's the rumor.
Yeah, Hickory
That's
Lake.
the
I believe
rumor.
it was. Yeah, but man, that guy could write some songs.
He could spit them out, couldn't he?
Sir?
He could spit them out as.
Oh yeah. He was just a man of wisdom. That's why.
As Country Jim would say, he is a word smith.
Exactly, he
That's
is.
what
And that guy
say.
there is. I despised English and writing in school, and now here I am, 61 years old, and then when I was 48 years old, I always wanted to do a film, and so I become a writer. But I remember the inspirations from Mickey Newberry. That is the guy that was and Willie Nelson too. People underestimate the amount of talent Willie Nelson has, not only as a writer, but his wisdoms and his craftsmanship is on a guitar.
And he does a mighty fine card trick. I don't know if you've ever seen that on YouTube or not, but he does a mighty fine card trick too. So I was going to ask you what artist had influence over you, and I'm hearing that Mickey Newberry was probably the guy.
If I had to say one person, it would be Mickey Newberry.
Yeah, okay.
And now, the gentleman of music would be Ray Price.
Oh yeah.
Ray Price was just and I didn't know that much about him. It's just other than he reminded me of my Uncle Glenn, and Ray Price was just. And then we were at Pasadena Rodeo, and I said, "Sir, could you stand right over here, please?" And I just knew he was the legend Ray Price,
right?
And Hard Ace by the Number, and I know all his songs like the back of my hand. But when he come up and he says, somebody asked him, a reporter asked him, said, "Now, how long did you live with Hank Williams?" And buddy, crank up some Hank, because my ears just, I'm hard of hearing. And I went and I started talking to that man because he was interesting.
At one point, if you go back and you listen to Ray Price, say the early 50s, he sounded, in a way, he was mimicking that Hank Williams sound. And the story goes, and you may correct me if you've heard this before, but somebody said to him, you need to find your own sound.
Right.
And that's kind of when, into the 60s, he still was doing some of the honky-tonk sound. That's before he got into the orchestrated, for the good times, and I won't mention it again, and all that kind of stuff, But the story goes that somebody had said to him, you need to find your sound. And it could have been somebody like Minnie Pearl, or it could have been somebody from the Opry back in those days. Have you heard that story before? Or did that sound?
Sounds believable.
That's all that counts.
See, now what I was told is that after Hank passed on, that the Drifting Cowboys was his backup band.
Yeah, I heard that too.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
And that may be why whoever said to him, you really need to find your own path. Don't stay in the vein of Hank Sr. Hank Sr., don't, I don't know who said that. Like I said, it could have been somebody like Minnie Pearl. Minnie Pearl was a very wise woman. She gave a lot of inspiration to a lot of people out there, And
it was like, but Minnie Pearl was the one that tried to keep Hank Williams straight.
Yeah.
But Hank Williams, when he was, I believe, 19 years old, he went to Pecos, Texas, and that's how he injured his back. But he did suffer from spina bifida, but his back injury got so bad, because I've always been fascinated with the backstory, not just what you hear, but the backstory of people, And but one of the people that I'm just enamored by was with Johnny Horton. The talent that guy had was just far exceeds a lot of people. I mean, it was, people did not realize, and Johnny Horton was, him and John Cash were very close as friends.
I didn't know that. Add that to the list of what you're talking to us about meeting Cash.
About what?
Meeting Johnny Cash.
Yeah. There used to be a place called the Rising Sun
in Trinity, Texas.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, my dad, my dad and my uncle, they were rounders. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. But they went from honky tonk, from, as he would say, from hell to breakfast. But he took me there, and I've seen a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the exact, but it was with my dad and my uncle when I met John Cash for the first time. Because everybody would call him John. They only called him John. Yeah, I'm Johnny Cash when he's on stage. But everybody I was around always called him John. And my uncle knew him, and he was on the downside of his career. It wasn't he wasn't doing Cobo Hall with 72,000 people with Hank Jr. opening up for him. I mean, he was kind of like that, and he was but Johnny Cash was a very humble man. And when I would talk to him, he would always tell me that he goes, well, my hero is a guy named Billy Graham. Because Billy Graham basically saved his life. And listening to him, and then when 85 and 86 and 80, around those 3 years was kind of crammed together, but the Highwaymen came about. And then when I went to the Houston Rodeo when they played, I don't remember if it was 87 or 88, I think their first time or whenever that was they played.
Yeah,
but I got to sit there and meet everybody again, and I got to talk with John Cash there. And it was funny because those three guys had never, kind of a funny off-the-wall cuff story, but we couldn't find Willie. Well, Willie was in the restroom right there, and we were waiting to get these shots for him. So if you see it, Willie comes running out the door, and you can see in that photograph, because there was no photo, it's just men right by the restroom behind us backstage of the rodeo, and I got this picture of them, and we always laugh about that,
You're say something about you eventually then put together it's a great book, photographs that you collected. Did you have to get all these people to sign off on?
Yeah, we did. Well, and we did this book, and what happened is the man who was the publisher in putting this together had lymphoma. So he was having a lot of medical issues, and so it didn't quite get done until after he passed away that we got this book printed, and they didn't do a real good job on it, and I was going to redo it, and then, life got in the way. And so I never did get to go redo it. And, but what I did is I had a bunch of the photographs that I did at some charitable event in Houston, and I had a bunch of the images from that right there, and we sold those and gave all the proceeds to this, to a youth foundation, to an organization that helped kids. And so that's what I did that was kind of really my inspiration for the book.
Animal Turner's been a long time close friend of mine, lived with me for several years. And, of course, he was the guitar player for...
the Bama Band.
For the Bama Band.
Hank Williams, Jr.
Yeah. 27 years, I think we say that he was. But there's a photograph that you put in that book that it's so over the top. I love it. It's I guess Wayne Animal Turner was leaning into the microphone, the central vocal mic, to sing harmony or something. Maybe.
Right, yeah.
And do you remember where that photograph?
That was at Willie's Nightlife. It was in February the 26th. 1991. I mean, that was instilled in my brain.
And what was the temperature outside?
I don't know, I'm just like that with dates and stuff because I just have an ironclad memory about dates. Now, some of the stuff is a blur, but some things, But I had met the Bama Band. I think the first time in '86 or '87 at Busch Stadium. I mean, there was a lot of people. That was some rowdy friends. That was a rowdy show. And I got to meet all those, and they were just so hospitable to me. And Ray Barrickman, the bass player, he met me at a Cowboy, and then I met these other folks with him, and then Animal sitting there. And I walked into this room after the show, and Animal was over there, and he was just playing this guitar like he was Eddie Van Halen. I'd never seen anybody play a guitar like that gentleman could play.
He's so good.
And I was like, oh my gosh. He said, well, we're going to be in Houston. And so I went and saw them there, and they played with Hank there, and I think they were with Merle Haggard.
Did you have some kind of? I mean, I can get into a few places, but did you have some kind of a press pass or something? How'd you get into all these places?
Well, it was just you met this manager, and this manager would make a phone call for you, or you would apply for a credential. But once you got to know a lot of the bands, and not only did I just meet the people, but I like to know people who you're photographed. I photograph their heart and their soul, not just an image of them, what God created of them playing the guitar, but I capture their soul with their images of what I'm doing.
Tell about that photograph of Hank and Animal singing in the microphone, how they looked. Do you remember?
Yeah, but
they look kind of sweaty and
that was at the rodeo, and But let me tell you, speaking of images and legends, every time I put a camera on Hank Williams Jr., I mean, it's just, the chills go down your spine. I mean, I'm just sitting there for just seconds looking at that guy, and sometimes I even miss the shot. But just look at this guy going, man, this guy is the son of the Godfather of country music. Mm-hmm. And but I have never seen. I've done over 400 concerts. I have never seen one man who could play precisely like Hank Williams Jr. of a musician. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the three greatest guitar players I've ever seen in my life. One of them being Chet Atkins. Yeah. And the other one is, what is the gentleman's name? Tommy Emmanuel. Yeah. When I saw that guy play the guitar, I was like, whoa. And then the third one is going to surprise you. It's a tie between Mark Knopfler and Vince Gill.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, Mark Knopfler plays with his finger. Vince Gill can play with a pick with his fingers. He can play with his toes. Yeah. He can play it upside down and backwards and everything. Oh yeah. But those four gentlemen right there are the greatest guitar players I have ever seen pick up the instrument.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great recordings of Chet and Mark. They did a lot.
Oh yeah,
they did.
Yeah,
yep,
the certified guitar player, I believe that's what it is, sir.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He always has it on their guitar right there. But when I didn't even know who Tommy Emmanuel was, and I show up at this private black tie event in Nashville, and this gentleman's up there, and he's playing "Here Comes the Sun." He's my guitar. These Beatles medley. Here Comes the Sun. My guitar gently weeps, and then he stopped, and I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And then he did "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" with acoustic guitar, and I was like, whoa. And I'm like, what are you doing? I said, no, man, I'm watching this guy here because I've never seen it. He goes, oh, that's Tommy Emmanuel. He's been around for years. I go, well, I never heard of him, and I was very, very impressed.
Right.
He's from Australia, I think, right?
He is Australian.
Yeah. Is he? Okay. Yeah.
So, are you still photographing?
Oh yes, I'm still photographing. I've backed off on a lot of tour dates. I'm doing got into the film industry. I've always wanted to do that. I always wanted to be a cinema photographer. And like I told you before, I spoke earlier, is that I got into writing, which that's what I do now. And it just kind of came about. So I wanted to get my first 3 bad films out of the way. The last, but as I met,
I was in 2 of them. Is there any connection?
Yeah. But
you were in one.
But Jim,
no, 2. Oh.
But Jim here is he's a larger than life character.
Gentleman Jim,
He is. I call him Gentleman because he's an inspiration to me for a lot of people.
All right, we're going to talk about. I'm going to hold this one up here so we can get maybe we can get a shot of it there in the deal. Maybe if I can get it right there.
It's called the Ghost of Grimes County.
There you go. We got it. I'll probably edit that in. But anyway, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'd always heard the story. And the people in my family, I mean, there was 12 or 13 brothers and sisters in my grandmother's family, big German family. And they were some very colorful individuals. And then it was a Thursday night, and I was probably 10 years old. And my uncle was riding with us, and we were on the river bottom up there and on the Navasota River riding this old Jeep. And he started telling me the story about this Anton character. And Anton was a son who did everything he was not supposed to do. And he drank some poison whiskey because people would steal. The Germans, they made their own whiskey. I mean, they couldn't just run down to the specs and get it, so they made their own bourbon. And the guy drank it, it was poison, and it killed him. Mm. But they say he came back as a ghost, and all these weird occurrences happened in their life. And then anybody that would get what they called the blood money, they would die June, July, and September. Well, when I started looking back at, hearing the story, and then I wanted to do a film, but I didn't know what to do it about. So I started looking at this. I was looking at these gravestones. I started reading all these diaries, and and talking, some of my aunts and my other uncles who were still alive at the time, back in 2003, and 2007 when I first started that entity here, it just came about, and it just flowed out. And I mean, I had $8,000, and I didn't even have a camera at the time, but I had $8,000 cash, and and I was just blessed by a lot of people who just came forward. And this Asian guy, a friend of mine, he did video, and he had film cameras and stuff, so he loaned me one. He goes, "You know how to use this?" I went, "No, sir." He said, "Well, I'm going to teach you. I'm still a photographer, and so it's basic dynamics the same." So he showed me how to do this, and buddy, we went out there and we did it. And we did the movie, and it took almost 2.5 years to make it because, I mean, the worst of worst weather and just hot, cold. And then it even snowed a couple of times, so I had the snow in there. Right. And I mean, it took us 2 hours to get, but it was snowing. But we got some really great stuff. And then, but when it was all said and done, I'll just speed up right there. Here me and about 4 other people made that whole film. We did it all by ourselves, And then I was looking around. I said, "Well, I'm going to do something good." Like I said, I never said this was the greatest movie in the world, but it's mine.
Is it a docudrama?
No, it is. It's a suspenseful film.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
And tell about the house.
Yeah, and anyway, and so. And what was funny about it, like I told you, the stars lined up because I get to film in 2 of the greatest mansions in Grimes County. One house was built in 1836, and it was built there. And this house is probably 12,000 square feet. And this house is, I mean, it's haunted for sure, And I mean, they had a billiard table up there on the 3rd floor, and these balls would roll around. And you have never seen the short, fat white guy run out of the building like that. Because, I mean, it scared everybody who's scared of nothing.
Yeah.
See, and I thought that's where the person died.
No, that was just the house we were just using to film there.
Okay.
Yeah. No, this was up at St. Mary's Church. Okay. Up the road where that happened. It happened out there behind that church. We had my grandmother's wedding. When that happened, when the Anton character supposedly died, but he's always been spotted. But if you look in that film right there, this is what's so weird, is I'm scared of cemeteries, but we were in this place, the Oddfellows. As long as there's somebody with me and there's 3 or 4 or 5, I'm not scared, but I mean, I'm shaking like you. And I mean, I run like a scared goose in a cemetery. And if you sit there and you look, this guy's sitting here, he's going, "Anton, my dear boy," and he's all by himself. He's just doing this monologue right here. You see this black entity of a shadow just right. I mean, you can sit there and watch it, and you see this lady's wearing this black veil. It's right behind him, and the tears walloped in my eyes. And I mean, it was hot.
And that's not CG. That is
is straight. Right. And there. I mean, that was nothing enhanced on that. And you can see it's probably about halfway through the film when this guy's sitting there. Wow. And I mean, and it scared me. And I do believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm. I've seen some stuff. I've had some experiences, and because I'm skeptical of a lot of things, but that scared the fire out of me when I actually witnessed some of that stuff.
Do we get to keep this and screen this?
Oh yeah, that's yours. That's
all right, well, me and Jim will share
now
this.
I've got 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, you do? Okay, okay.
But I've always loved ghost stories, and I loved the horror, but I've always been fascinated with ghosts and cars. But my passion is music. So,
do you play?
Oh yeah, I play. I'm not very good at it, but I'm humble with it. But I like to play. I collect guitars. I like to play a few notes in there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Now, when I was a kid, what got me into guitars is when I was a kid, 11, 12 years old. There used to be a gentleman, a blues guy named Lightning Hopkins, and he would come to Anderson, Texas. I don't know if he had relatives up there, but there was always this kid. His name was Adolphus. He would always go. He's always going to try. Adolphus, get over here, Adolphus. This kid's all here. So that that was a dry county back then. And my dad would drink them big old quart pearl beers, and my dad would have this old metal ice cooler. He'd bring those and he'd give Lightning a couple right there. And I didn't know how famous Lightning was. I mean, I'm just a stupid kid on a BMX bike riding up and down while he's going bump, 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 bump. And he showed me how to play it. And that's what got me into the guitar was Lightning Hopkins. And I seen him, a couple of years, and then after that, we got busy with baseball and Pee Wee football and stuff. And I never gave it a second thought, and then he passed on, But he was my inspiration for that, for his music. I mean, when I would hear somebody play the music, but after you saw Lightning Hopkins, and one time there was a guy named Pine Top Perkins with him. Do you know who that is? A real famous piano player?
I don't, but go ahead.
Pine Top Perkins was a very famous, and he lived till he was 96 years old.
Wow.
And then what fascinated me is that Pine Top Perkins, after watching him, I started reading about these guys, like Blind Lemon Jefferson and all these cats. I started reading about these guys. But everybody was a cat to him. And I go, how many cats does he have? I didn't know, but that's what he just called everybody was a cat. But he said that he knew Robert Johnson. And I was like, wow. That's the only person I've ever met that ever even talked about Robert Johnson was him. But anyway, speeding forward, I was trying to do a couple of films, and then my mom got sick and passed away from cancer, and so that career kind of got on hold because it just took up so much time to do that, and I couldn't leave my mom just there. So I said, "Well, I'm just going to write." Well, I wrote about 9 scripts, and they didn't really please me. So I really got enthralled with doing something about Johnny. I said, I want to do a music movie. So what I was going to do, I kind of like a little bit of the unknown, and I like something a little out there and a little bit of sci-fi. So what I was going to do is I was going to write a movie, basically like a photojournalist like me, who was going to go back in time, because I'm a big, huge Buddy Holly fan, to go back into time and tell Buddy Holly not to get on the plane. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's going to be a cool concept. But what happens is I try to find somebody that can get me back into time, take me back into time, get me to Howard Hughes, because he was the greatest engineer, and to create this time machine so we can go back and tell Buddy Holly back to the 50s not to get on this plane. Well, that went south real quick. When Buddy Holly and them his estate wanted a lot of money to put his image and likeness on there. So I said, well, I love Buddy, and we'll just leave him like he is. But they are doing a new movie called Clear Lake about Buddy Holly, which I think is going to do really fine. So I changed gears. So one day, it was a Thursday, and I'm out there mowing the yard. Of course, I had met Tillman Franks. I'd seen him at Gillies and a couple of different places, around town. And so I said, well, he knows that was Johnny Horton's manager. So because I love mowing the yard. So that Thursday I was out there, and so I didn't have any clarity. I started writing this, and I was on the 3rd page, and I just didn't know how to write it. So I go, well, he's got a son, and I don't know his name. I said, well, Ben Franks Jr., Tillman Franks Jr., which he goes by Ben. So I called a friend of mine. I said, hey, in Shreveport, I said, do you know that? He goes, yeah. So I sent him a text, and he called me. I said, sir, it's an honor to speak to you. I'm coming to see you. Well, what about? I said, I'm going to write this movie, but I need to talk to you. So I go there. So he gave me the clarity that I needed to come up with this new movie. And it's going to be called Heartbroke Tonight. And what it's about a 50s singer. Basically, it's loosely based on Johnny Horton's story, how Johnny Horton would do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And that's what the biggest inspiration was. But it's got the Buddy Holly theme in it. It's got the Johnny Horton, because Johnny Horton was kind of a rebel about his music, Mm-hmm. But the thing that about my character, is like I told you, I'm a big Hank Williams enthusiast, is that they were both married to the same woman, Billie Jean. They both died in a Cadillac. And their last gig was at the Skyline Ballroom in Austin, Texas. Hank played there in September, okay? And then he died New Year's Eve, okay? And that was Johnny Horton's last gig, which was on November the 4th of 1960. See? Wow. And the reason... Johnny Horton had these premonitions that he was going to die. Wow. He was in what they called the Rosicrucian Society. He was really involved in this stuff. And what he would do is he would actually hold seances and in the back of the post office in Shreveport with the postman, this guy there. And they got involved in this Rosicrucian Society, which is, they just believe, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, they still believe in God. They just think they can metamorphosize and go to here and just transmeditate to wherever.
Sure.
That was Johnny Horton. But Johnny Horton believed in premonitions. Yeah. And I mean, he would give people, he started giving people possessions. He knew he was going to die, Wow. And Merle Kilgore was a great gentleman who was involved with him. And he gave Merle Kilgore one of his guitars. And I said, and he said, remember this, if I die, the drummer is a rummer and he won't skip a beat. He said, when you hear that, that's me coming back. That's my signal to you when I come back. And man, I actually went up there to Milan, Texas, where he died, and 3 years ago, and I only talked to the gentleman one time who had the newspaper. He took the pictures when that guy killed Johnny Horton. He hit him head on. And Tommy Tomlinson, he lost his leg, and Tillman Franks, his road manager, his manager was the bass player, he didn't drive. But Johnny, he died in Rockdale, and but I got to see that stuff, and the guy was driving a 59 Ranchero, and of course he was intoxicated, and he was a Texas A&M student, and it was kind of an embarrassment, but Johnny perished in that accident. But I've read just tremendous amounts about Johnny Horton, and I wanted him to be, my catalyst to make this film, to finish what he didn't get to do from the 50s. So my character is Bobby Bishop. Okay, now let me back up a moment here. Like I said, years ago, I used to just go find these people and call them up and say, hey, I'm Ed Collins. I'd like to come talk to you. Well, this is a strange call. I know it's off the cuff, but I want to come meet you. That's because I want to come shake your hand and I want to have a word with you.
Right.
Well, one guy, his name was Horace Logan, he's the guy that coined the phrase, Elvis has left the building.
Wow. Didn't know that either.
Yeah, he did. He ran the Louisiana Hayride. Yeah. This gentleman right there, what do you want? He was giving me the business to come see him, but he was very, very, once he opened up to me, he was very, very nice, and he was just full of knowledge. Anybody that knew Hank Williams and got all these great people started, from the Louisiana Hayride, Maggie Warwick, and the funniest thing he ever said, there was a lady named Maggie Warwick who eventually wound up with a really sweet lady. She's passed on now, but Maggie, she was from Lubbock, Texas, and Hoss just told her, he said, Maggie, this is my stage. This is some valuable real estate here. And if you don't get yourself off the stage here and let a Johnny Horton sing, I'm going to kick your butt back to Lubbock, Texas. You can tell Buddy Holly Pusley hello for me. And we laughed, about that so hard. I'm borrowing that line. I'm going to steal it, basically, and put it
now, tell us the name of the movie again.
It's called Heartbroke Tonight.
Heartbroke Tonight. Okay.
Right.
I hate to say this, but we're running out of time.
Okay.
We're running out of time here, but we want to have you back.
Okay.
And we will do a number 2 down the road here, maybe when you're available, maybe the next couple of months or something, maybe a month or so. Yeah. But this is a lot of stuff. We could actually go on and on for a couple hours here.
It is, but there's just so much to cover. I've been doing this 47 years, and sir, and I appreciate.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, you absolutely.
Jim, everybody's just a true gentleman, and we appreciate you hosting me at your.
Yeah, this is more. I know Jim told me a lot about you, but what you've fed us is like wow.
Yeah, we're just scraping the top.
Yeah, but this is crazy. You're somewhat of a historian.
Yeah, I believe in reading and keeping that alive.
That is pretty cool. Well, Ed Collins, man, we do appreciate you being with us here on the podcast.
It's an honor, sir. God bless you.
Folks, we'll see y'all on another one.
Adios. Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.